Hello everyone, welcome to the Swan Song Project Podcast. My name is Ben Buddy Slack and I'm the founder of the Swan Song Project and the host of this podcast. The Swan Song Project is a charity and we're based in Leeds in England, and we help people who are terminally ill or bereaved to write and record an original song. We believe in celebrating lives, making memories and leaving legacies. If you'd like to find out more about our work, you can visit our website, which is swansongproject.co.uk. The podcast features songwriters. Each episode I have a different guest on. I ask them to share with us one of their songs. I ask them to share a songwriting tip, and I also ask them to share a song that's meaningful to them in some way related to bereavement. This episode features Boff Whalley from Chumbawamba. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, welcome to the Swan Song Project Podcast. Today I'm here with Boff Whalley.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. The first, what you got, maiden voyage of the in-person podcast in the studio.
Excellent.
Here. So thank you
first
for being
of
there.
many.
First of many, we hope.
Yeah.
Thank
Brilliant.
you for coming over. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Looking forward to talking some songwriting with you. Boff's a founder member of Chumbawamba, who are a band that I've kind of just lots of memories of growing up with Chumbawamba. There's a story I always remember when I was probably about 9. It was probably around the time Tub Thumper came out.
Yeah,
it was huge. A friend of mine's dad, I think, knew one of yous. I don't know if you did or not, but it was one of the things at school. It was like, a friend of mine's dad knows Chumbawamba.
Yeah.
And it was like a
claim. They're all horrible.
It was like a claim to fame at the time at school. That's the memory that always comes back to me about it.
Yeah.
But anyone new to the podcast, anyway, we do it in 3 sections. So first we're going to talk about the song that Boff's written and how he wrote it. Section 2, I'm going to ask Boff for a songwriting tip. And then section 3, we'll talk about a song that's meaningful to Boff in some way relating to bereavement. So which song of yours have you chosen for us to talk about first?
The first one, it's a bit of a weird choice because it's not really representative of kind of anything else that I tend to do. But it's a song that we did with Chumbas, with Chumbawamba, and it's called Your Ugly Houses. And I wanted to choose it because for people that aren't songwriters who watch something like that, not like this, you can tend to kind of listen to songwriters and you feel like you're jumping in at the deep end and they're kind of explaining quite, it's like when Paul McCartney says, I woke up and I had a dream and I wrote, I was right, I had the melody for Yesterday in my head. But he's kind of missing out the fact that he'd been a songwriter for like 10 years up to that point. And he'd honed that craft. So I just thought, what have I written that's like incredibly simple? So this song has just got 3 chords that repeat over and over again. It's really loud. I obviously wrote it for Chumbawamba, so they all kind of pitched in bits, but it's based on I'd read this article in Hello magazine. I can't remember why I was reading Hello magazine, and it had an article about Sting and Trudy's new Tudor mansion somewhere, and it was like Trudy and Sting show you around their mansion. I was like looking at the pictures of them in each room, like going, here, and the tapestries and ornate carvings and busts of, and it was the ugliest thing I've ever seen. And it kind of made me think, these multimillionaires, they've got no taste. They, he can write a good song, but he will, spend like hundreds of thousands on some ridiculous tapestry that doesn't fit with the walnut, bathroom cabinets. And it was awful. And I just thought, instead of trying to kind of intellectualize this my response to it, what about just going, your ugly houses? And that's it. That's the entire lyric, said lots and lots of times, and really fast and loud. And it was great to do live because Alice used to have a big kind of placard, a wooden stake with a plaque on it. It just said, on it. And she'd just like run around the stage, jumping up and down with it. So it was great fun. And it just made me think, anyone can write this. Anyone can write a song like that. If you keep something really simple, and some of my favorite songs, by other people are just really, really simple. And you just have to capture some honesty and some kind of way of telling the story. that's new or funny or interesting or whatever, and don't get too hung up on the intricacies of should have a bridge before it comes to the chorus, and when's it going to go to the kind of minor bit. It's like sometimes you just want to say it how it is. It's
a great sound. If anyone's not familiar with the song, by the way, I'll put the link in the description so you can pause us at any point and go and check it out if you're not already familiar with it. But yeah,
it's very short. If
it won't take you long back to you. But yeah, I was listening to it, I was thinking that I bet this was so much fun to play live.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. Yeah, because there's something visceral about I love so many kinds of music, but when you can just sometimes hear something that just kind of punches you in the gut. It's just so like, there it is. That's all. That's all it is. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Don't think too hard about
it. Yeah. And it's a good example of, like, I would like what you're saying at the start as well, of people can be intimidated by songwriting when it's described in certain ways.
Yeah.
Or when it is like it's just a gift. It's just certain people have it, and or like and that songs. There's many songs can have so many functions, and so they can just be like immediate reaction, just put down. Was it as quick to write? Like, so did it? So you had that phrase of the early ugly houses, and then did the music just fall out as well?
It was just like it's like listening to the Ramones for the first time, where just playing Blitzkrieg Bop or something, and it's just like it just goes exactly where you want it to go, and you just think it sounds like it's taken them 5 minutes to write it. Maybe it didn't, but that's the beauty of it. Hey ho, let's go. Da, 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 da. I just think that's brilliant. And at the same time, I would love something. I can listen to something that's really complex and interesting and that goes off in all sorts of different directions and stuff like that. But I love that simplicity stuff. It's great.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about, like, getting your inspiration. Like, was that something you would do regularly with songs, where it would be like you just get something, it'd be that immediate reaction, like, oh, that's a song there? Or like, would you often have come to things in more different ways, I guess?
Normally what I've always done, and I kind of learned this during my time with Chumbawamba, but since then I've been working with like theatre companies and arts companies and opera and community projects and everything. And what I've realised is that when I work best is when there's an idea and you've got to fulfil the idea in songs. So what we did is with Chumbas, unlike nearly every band that we knew, instead of kind of, songwriters carry around little notebooks and have ideas and eventually they've got enough for an album and then they all make an album. What we did is we would, after we'd finished an album and we were touring it, at some point we'd say, right, we're having a meeting about what we're going to do next. And we'd have a meeting, because we were always having meetings. And we'd have a meeting, go, so what's the next album going to be about? And what's the concept of it? What are we going to say? What's it going to sound like? We'd all decide together what the kind of parameters are of what we were doing. Are we going to do these kind of songs? Is it going to be about this? And we'd have a rough idea, and then it's that whole thing where if teachers say that if you have a classroom full of primary school kids and you give them all a blank sheet of paper and write whatever you want, then it's really difficult to come up with. It's rubbish. It's really difficult. But if you give them a title, then they're off. You've sparked something, and they're all away, and they all write something different, but they're sparked by it. So that's what we did, and so since then, it's like if I work with Red Ladder Theatre and we're doing a musical about, that's based on Bertolt Brecht's lyrics, and I immediately can go and research it and find out what kind of music suits that kind of thing, and really think about what it is before I ever pick a guitar up or hit a piano or anything like that. There's always a thing of, what is this and what's it for? Who's it for? Knowing your audience, I always think that's important. I think if people want to sit at home with the guitars and play music for themselves, then I think that's fantastic. But I've never thought that because I didn't play guitar until punk happened. So the only reason to pick up a guitar was to go and plug it in and with my mates and say something to an audience. The idea of sitting on my own and playing, it just hadn't occurred to me. So that's my kind of tradition, was always art. Songs are about communicating an idea. They're about having a dialogue and having a conversation. And if you can have a conversation that isn't going, we're up here on a stage and we're better than you and you'll never be able to do what we do. If you instead you do a thing where you say, here's some songs and we've all thrown them together ourselves. We're not particularly great musicians. And to be honest, a lot of you in the audience could come and do this, anytime. And I love that as well. Giving away the power. So you can write songs as well. So that's why I've been doing loads of work with different community groups over the past maybe 7, 8, 9 years, where you say to people, you don't say, here you go, you've never written a song before, just write a song. It's easy. You say, here's a way of collecting some ideas onto a sheet of paper, and then here's a way of finding the line in there that might be a nice one to sing, and then here's a way of making that into a story. And people can create their own things. And I get to then put that into music and add musicians, and then the people who've written the initial ideas, even if it's just one line, they feel part of it. Yeah. And they think, oh, I can do that. Yeah. And obviously they realize that I've had 30 odd years of doing that. So I'm allowed to go, well, there is a craft to it and an art as well. But actually at root, you could come up with the ideas yourself. Yeah. So, and I've really enjoyed doing that.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating work, isn't it? And we like all the stuff saying about it. So it's that kind of, I hate that idea. Some people have that, like musicians are like a different type of person. Like, I'm not a musician, I'm not a creative person. It's like, again, it's everyone is. It's, and it's the craft there. It's like, there's a quote, again, I much people listen to the podcast regularly, so I could hear me say about this quote. It comes up all the time. I think it was Leonard Cohen was talking about the separation in any creative activity of the inspiration and the craftsmanship and skill. Right, yeah. So so everyone has inspiration, everyone has ideas and experiences, but then it's the experienced person who knows the tricks to then arrange that. Yeah. So that's why with community music so interesting, because it's like, I always think of it then like, I'm being the craftsman, they're doing the inspiration. Yeah. So I'm just helping to get their ideas out and then making those suggestions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if people see that there is a way through doing that, then they'll think, okay, I can get that. Even just finding a line if someone's written you get someone to write down lots of ideas, and then you go, okay, well, this line is standing out because I can hear it being sung in my head. If someone writes, I'm sitting in the garage and there's the radiator, then I think I'm not singing that. Yeah. That's not suggesting something. But if someone says, something that's got a nice rhyming word to it, that's got some like, the radiator's on and I'm feeling blue. And I think, okay, well, you could start with that one because you can sing that. Yeah, and you can carry it on. What happens next in that story of sitting in this place with the radiator, and why are you sad? You've got a nice way in. Yeah, and people get it really quickly. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? So, like, I guess with that, I guess part of that is, your ear being more familiar with how things are sung. Yeah. Than someone who's not so much before might be. Yeah. So then you can say like this, just whether it's something like the way it rolls off the tongue, or often it's how are you going to write other lines that are going to fit if the phrase is really long and clunky or something like that. Yeah. But then also being able to then suggest like, it's not the idea's bad, it's just how could we do it that's going to work a bit better. Yeah. So like you say, like then reframing it about the radiator starting off. Yeah. However it is. It's interesting. And you say people do get it. Yeah. And like I think there's there is quite an intuitive sense of what sounds good and what doesn't.
I think there is, but I think it's learned as well. Yeah. I think you can learn it, because I think that. So a lot of people think that with any creative thing, whether it's playwriting or writing novels or whatever, that you can. Oh, I've got a novel in me. I'll jump in and just start writing one, and you can't really do that. You do have to learn the craft of it. Yeah. But once you've learned the craft and you've learned the technique and all that sort of thing, then you can start breaking the rules. Yeah. So, and I always thought it with, remember the first time I heard Squeeze singing Up the Junction, and it's got no chorus. It's just a story from start to finish. It never comes back to the same line ever. Not even. It only says Up the Junction right at the very end. And the first line is, I never thought it would happen with me and that girl from Clapham. And I think there's no less likely line to start a pop song. It's just clunky but it's beautiful. Yeah. And because they know so well about how to put melody and tune and melody and words together, they've thought, Glenn Tilbrook's got, I know how to make this work.
Yeah.
And they do it almost every line is, incubator, and 30 minutes later. It's clunky all the way through, but beautiful.
It works, yeah. Nick Cave does a lot of that as well. He's one of my big heroes. Did you ever hear the song God Is in the House?
Yeah, I think I have. Yeah, I'm not really familiar with it, but yeah.
There's some lines in that way again. Like, I always thought it was interesting because it's him making a choice to have a lyric. It's kind of I guess prioritizing the lyric over the melody in some way. Like, I'm going to break the way the melody's rolling. Yeah. Because I want to have this lyric here. Yeah. But there's one in that of like, I can't remember the preceding part is it, but there's a thing about goose stepping, 12-stepping, teetotalitarian. It's just like one of those things like, oh wow. Yeah. But I love it. It's like yeah. So you say it's kind of, it's those choices, isn't it? Of and you say people learn the craft, learn the rules and learn the craft, and then make those decisions of whether I guess like having a consistent pitch perfect melody with rhymes that are consistent, or whether it's like, actually I want to say this phrase, so it's going to make it sound a bit clunky or something, but that's what's important for this song, and sometimes it's different. The clunkiness works because it's in the middle of lots of smooth stuff. Yeah. And so there's lots of smooth stuff going on, but then you throw in. I was just doing one this weekend where I was working. Well, I was reading something. Oh yeah, it's my friend Sarah Woods is a writer, and she'd written this thing which was written in like a fairy tale, and it was kind of using that imagery of fairy tales and happy ever afters and it had that kind of feel to it. But then in the middle of this story, it's like the knight gets out his laptop and starts doing something, and then it returns, and you think, oh, that's beautiful. Just throwing something in that doesn't fit, that shouldn't be there, that sounds like whoa. But that's again, and you have to really be careful when you do that kind of thing. And you learn when you can get away with it. Yeah. It's what I'm thinking about. I think punk's a great example of it. Of that, sometimes you get artists that, like, when they first start, are kind of out there and different, and it's because they've not learned the rules yet. Yeah, but it works. It's like they've stumbled across something which works really well. Yeah, and others that it takes longer to learn and then break the rules next. So like Tom Waits is a kind of an example of somebody who broke so many rules when he learnt them all. Yeah. And often when you hear people right at the beginning and they don't know the rules and they come up with something incredible, and you think, wow, that's fantastic. It's usually kind of some beautiful, naive, simple, lovely thing. But then they find it hard to sustain that. So then the next few years after that, they're kind of floundering a bit, and they're not really sure what to do with all that. And then they learn. They learn what the techniques are and all that sort of thing. And sometimes I think people can end up overthinking it, because like the first one just came out, and then all of a sudden it's like, right, we need to replicate that. So what techniques we're going to use there, rather than just being like, repeat that. Yeah. It's interesting. Isn't it? Yeah. And I would say with punk, especially, there's some music where like being a better musician doesn't actually work better. Yeah. But like I always see certain punk singers where at first where it's just really raw and like not sung very well technically. Yeah. But it's got that energy and that attitude, and then they learn to sing properly, and it's like, oh, I'm not actually interested anymore. It's sung better, but the attitude's kind of it is. It's the rawness and the simplicity of it that can make something. Well, it makes it feel real, for one thing. Because suddenly in that era, in like 77 or whatever, 1977, there was this idea that music shifted from being up on stage up there, and it suddenly came right down into these little pubs that we went in, and you thought, now we're allowed to have a go, even though I haven't a clue what I'm doing. I can have a go now.
whereas I would never been able to have a go when it was still all that. That was because that era before punk was all people in the bedrooms thinking that you had to serve an apprenticeship for 3 or 4 years as a musician to be able to stand up on stage in front of people. And hopefully punk just kind of got rid of that. And now, well, the difference is now that young people can just do what they want on keyboards and, you know, in the bedrooms and come up with fantastic things. And the problem with that, obviously, is that before there was a sense of people, a physical thing of people coming together and trying to create something together.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't like to see that completely disappear.
Yeah.
Because that's great. But if people can, you know, come up with stuff on the laptops now that sound fantastic, you know, rather than thinking that they've got to go through some huge record company and do auditions and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that in terms of the so yeah, I've always been very jealous of people who could do the technologies that, you know, piece a whole track together. Yeah. Like it's something I'd love to be able to do, but I've really struggled with the technology for certain things. Yeah. So I think it's an amazing skill to have to do, but also, and to be able to work out all those parts in your head. And do them all. Yeah. But then, like, as you mentioned, Chumba used to do that as well. Like, one of the things that is great is when you have an initial idea and you throw it to your band, and they're like, oh, well, this is what I might do for this, and so I might. Yeah. And that's, I guess, part of a great band, isn't it? Is that everyone has their own flair and their own take on. Yeah. And one of the things that I think is really important about songwriting or doing anything creative is to be open to other people, is to be open to collaboration and be open to other people suggesting things. Because if you think that you've written something or you've got an idea and it's the best idea ever in the world and that nobody else has any right to say anything, then that's just ridiculous. You've got to be aware. One of the things I've always really liked about creative stuff is whether it's, you know, a play or a novel or a song or whatever, is writing something and spending all day on something, really working at something, and then the next day thinking that's crap and throwing it away. Nowadays you just put it in the bin on the screen, but you know, just getting rid and thinking, that's fine. It's good to get rid of stuff, because people can just labor over something forever. I've got this song I've been working on for 2 years and eventually I'll get it right. And at some point you think, just get rid of it and start a new one. And because sometimes it's not worth it. And it's also good if people, obviously we had it with the band and then everything else I've done since, I'm always really eager to hear what other people think. So if someone says, it's good that, not sure about that bit, why is that bit there? And you kind of think, oh yeah, maybe they're right. I'll try changing that. Sometimes you fight it. Sometimes you go, I've done it before. I think, no, they're completely wrong. It's fine how it is. And, you know, they're just talking rubbish and it gnaws away at you. And you think, okay, I'll have a little go at what they were suggesting. And you do it and you think, oh, it's better. They were right. I'm going to have to go and admit that they were right. Yeah. But it's great. It's a really good feeling if you can do that. Yeah, it's really good. And I guess like you develop a bit of a, I think it's to some extent, isn't it? But it's kind of like, I guess it's not thinking of the ideas personally. Like when someone criticises them, they're not criticising you; they're criticising an idea that you've had, and the overall aim is to make that idea as good as possible. Yeah. So it's not about who's right or wrong; it's about making this work as well as. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And because it is about playing it for other people, it's about conversation, then really the people that are going to hear this thing, all they care about is the product. Yeah. They don't care about the process you've gone through and the agony and the arguments and the backstage fights or whatever it is. They just want to hear this thing and go, yeah, that's good, that. Yeah. I like that. And one of the problems with art and creativity is that in order to do it in the first place, you've got to have an ego that says, you know, I think enough of this thing, this song or whatever it is, I think enough of it to go in front of an audience and go, look at this thing that I've done. And you've got to have an ego to do that. You've got to, and you have to be really careful that ego doesn't take over and doesn't and so
I think a lot of fantastic collaborations and partnerships in songwriting. So the obvious one is Lennon and McCartney. They were incredible together for 8 years, and they changed every year and became almost a different band every year. They still had this focus with each other, challenging each other, adding to each other's work. Incredible. And then the band split up. They had about maybe 3 years where they still had that energy. Mm-hmm. And then they ran out of steam. They ran out of ideas. And it didn't matter what they did. They never wrote a song as good as the songs they were writing in the 1960s again. And you think, well, where did that creativity go?
Yeah.
That's impossible. But what it is, it's not the creativity, it's the to and fro of the challenge and the doesn't matter what McCartney's, he's an incredible songwriter, but he's never going to write those songs in the 60s again.
Yeah.
And I used to think, it's because he's getting older. But now I think, no, it's because he lost that drive where he was being challenged, and he knew that Lennon would go, no, that one's a bit shit, that one. And he'd be upset, but he'd think, yeah, he's got a point.
Yeah.
Whereas now nobody dare tell Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
If he comes into a studio and goes, I'm ready for I'm going to make a new album, the studio engineers and the producers and the record company and the band, everybody, they're all going, yes, Paul, that's great, Paul. And that must be really sad. That's really weird. Because you want Lennon there going, not keen on that one. Have you got any more?
Yeah, I've never thought of it like that, but yeah, you're right there. So it's an interesting way of looking at it. And lots of bands who, when someone gets to that level, unless there's people who have been involved with them for a long time and who know them and are respected as peers.
Yeah.
Rather than Yeah.
And even then, most kind of solo performers have people with them who stick with them.
Yeah.
Who can be the people that say, not sure about that one. Not sure about that one, Nick.
Yeah. But I guess whether with some of them, if it's a performer and a manager or something like that who've been together a long time, whether there's something about a collaborative duo like Lennon and McCartney where they're both co-contributors.
Yeah.
Obviously, I imagine the relationship can be very similar.
Yeah.
People will find the mutual interest in the career, but whether there's something about that working together and being able to be like, this is what I think this idea should go.
Yeah.
The actual collaborating on the product maybe.
Yeah. Or just keeping you on your toes, stopping you getting complacent and lazy. Because once you do understand what the craft is and how to put something together, you could just end up just doing the same thing over and over again, which a lot of artists do. Yeah. And again, that's another kind of slow death. Once you start realizing that every album's the same, and then you think, all right, there's no one pushing them. There's no one going, let's try something different this time.
Yeah.
Let's get rid of that instrumentation and try a completely different thing. Let's challenge you. Yeah. I think everyone would really benefit from that, but it's not easy, especially if you're selling records.
Yeah.
If and you've got a record company and they just say, just keep making that one.
Yeah.
They keep selling, just keep doing it.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? I wonder this, because there's a lot of artists where I want every album to be something new and exciting and fresh. And there's others where I do kind of like the familiarity. I'm a big AC/DC fan.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously AC/DC have written the same album forever, but it's great.
Yeah, that's funny.
So then I wonder whether if AC/DC came out with a load of jazzy ballads, I'd be like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
where's my anthem?
It would be awful. That's true, yeah.
But whether certain bands, I guess what they're doing it for, whether for them it is just that release of energy and that, I imagine for bands the live element is a big part of it as well. They're not writing songs to try. They're not trying to express complicated emotions most of the time. They're writing a rock song that they can give some energy to, and the crowd can jump up and down. So
I like the idea of AC/DC expressing complex emotions. Yeah.
It's funny.
But yeah, you're right, because I've been to see bands where you just want the old stuff. I mean, I've never seen Rolling Stones, but I imagine if you went to a Rolling Stones concert and Jagger goes, "Here's 2 or 3 new ones off the album, everyone's like, "Oh, I'm just going to the toilet. I'll be back in a few minutes." Tell me when they do Satisfaction.
Yeah. And same like I was big into the blues. So again, like, well, yeah, so I was looking to see B.B. King before he died.
All right, yeah.
You know, when you go and see someone like that, you want to see him play the blues.
Yeah, absolutely.
certain genres lend themselves more to new material than others, don't they?
Yeah.
What was I going to say then? But it's also just that thing, isn't it? Like people talk about wanting something new, but they don't want it to be completely new. It has to be just enough amount of originality, so it's familiar enough that you kind of like, okay, I get this.
Definitely, yeah.
So that's, I guess, how a lot of artists work, isn't it? It's like it's gradually changing, so you can see that you can track the changes over album by album rather than it being completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I like with the band was always that was always there. So that if we went from making like a pop song to doing a folk song to doing some like dance beat thing, it would probably always have some harmonies on it, and they're quite recognisable. So I can see that's Chumbas, and they're trying to do this. So there would be some kind of thread, or the lead vocals. You know, Alice, Dunstan, and Danbert had a way of just doing the vocals that people would recognise, no matter what genre was.
Yeah.
Whereas when I've been working with theatre, I love the fact that it's all going to be sung and characterised by people playing characters. So you don't have to have any connection to what you've done before. It's completely new.
Yeah.
And it's really what's the word? It's really liberating.
Yeah, it must be quite a transition.
Yeah, it's great. You just think, what's the world of this now? It doesn't have to. Nobody has to recognise it as being me that wrote it at all. Whereas with a band, you do have to, because you've got an audience and you want people to keep coming to gigs, don't you? So,
are you aware when you're doing that? Are there certain things that like, I almost like signatures of yours in your style of writing that then you have to be aware of and try to not do for this? Is there anything where you're like, oh, that sounds too much like something I would write in a previous song?
Sometimes I do, but the one thing that I hang on to, whether I'm writing, you know, whatever, Bertolt Brecht stuff or opera or pop music or folk music, I always hang on to the fact that I love melodies. I think if you go and see a play or anything, I love the idea that you walk out of the theatre or the gig and you think, I liked that one that went rather than walking out. And this is my criticism of things like Lloyd Webber, is that you can go and watch something for an hour and a half and you come out within 5 minutes, you can't sing any of the songs. Yeah. Even if you think it was brilliant and it looked amazing, it sounded amazing, and it you know, the emotion and the passion and everything, but I can't remember any of the tunes. Yeah. And that always disappoints me, and that's just me. I was brought up loving tunes. Yeah. So even now, if I write for anything, I always think, ooh, that makes a nice little repeated melody that people will latch onto. Because I think melodies you just don't run out of them. You just keep coming up with new ones, and it's lovely. Yeah,
no, that's a really good point. And that's, I hadn't thought of that again before, but like, that does make sense of how nice it is when you come out with something and you've got that little tune in your head. Yeah. And some of those bigger ones, you don't quite get that.
Because there is a thing, actually, one of the things that, if I'm talking about songwriting to people, if I'm doing like kind of workshop or something, one of the things that people get trapped by is, if you're playing guitar or piano, whatever you play, is that you can get trapped by the chords that you play. So you're just playing G, C, D, and you're playing them over and over. It's really tempting to make your melodies. You're singing this song and then it changes chord and then it changes chord again. And you've got to get away from that. Don't follow the chords. One of the best things that happened to me was that I cut through my arm with an axe trying to chop wood, and I couldn't play guitar. I was in hospital and everything. I couldn't play guitar for about 9 months, couldn't play an instrument, because I was just like this. And so I just started writing everything a cappella in my head. And if you're just writing a melody without instantly picking up a guitar, how does that fit? If you've just got, it's just the tune, then you've got to be more rigorous. You've got to think that tune's got to work. You can't go, and I'm singing a song. No, think of a melody that's going to that's going to stick. And so you sing a melody, and I go running most days, and that's often when I just kind of have a bit of an idea for a melody, and then I use the old kind of Paul McCartney thing, which is don't go home and write it down or record it, just leave it, and then the next day, if you've forgotten it, it wasn't very good. Yeah. And I love that advice. Yeah. So that's what I do. I always think, leave it, and then the next day I think, well, yeah, that melody's still there. It must be okay. It must be
not leaving yet.
Yeah. So then I knew I could write to it, and it was really good for me not to just pick up a guitar every time I had an idea for a song.
Yeah, that is really interesting. So then with that, would you, well, from first thing, do you do melodies without any lyrics? Yeah, do you just come up with tunes, or do you generally have an idea of?
Yeah, I usually have an idea of what it is I'm
something lyrical that you're
trying to say.
Yeah.
If I think, so like, because with the choir, I'm working with Commoners Choir, and we had this idea recently, we were going to write this song about, we wanted to write a song that was about hope and a song that was about anger, kind of have them separately. And we all discussed what they were going to be and what kind of story they could be and everything. So I know all the parameters of it. So then if I'm writing or I'm running or something, I've got an idea. And I think I've got something to work on, and I know what kind of thing it could be. So for instance, I just finished one this week because we wanted to write about hope, and we were all discussing it. What's a story that's like hopeful? There's so many depressing stories in the news. What's a story that's recent, that's hopeful, that we can sing about? And somebody in the choir said, there was that situation in Glasgow was it last year or the year before? I think it was last year, where these two Indian guys who lived in a part of Glasgow, the immigration police came with a van and got them out of the beds at like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, and kind of dragged them out, and they were taking them off to a detention centre possibly to be deported. And literally within a minute or two, whilst this commotion was going on, a couple of neighbours came out and said, "What are you doing?" And then a couple more came out and said, "You can't do that. Who are you?" Or with the immigration police. And, well, what rules have you got to be able to do this? And then the police turn up and try and say, well, we're keeping the peace. And then more neighbours come in. And in the end, literally within 40 minutes, an hour, there were like 300 or 400 people. And one guy kind of got under the van. The two detainees are in the back of the van, but everybody's surrounding the van, and everybody starts sitting down and singing. And in the end, and the police come, form a big cordon, and more and more people come. It gets it's this fantastic story. And in the end, the police are like, we can't handle this. There's going to be some kind of riot or something. So they let them go. And the immigration force kind of say, well, it's not over yet, and we'll be back sometime and all that. But they had to let them go, and everybody cheers, and it's this fantastic victory, and it's beautiful. And what the people in the street were singing all the way through is they're our neighbours, let them go. They're our neighbours, let them go. So we're like, okay, this lovely thing. And somebody in the choir said, we've got to use that phrase, they're our neighbours, let them go. And so immediately I'm just thinking, great, it's just a line. It's a chorus, it's a melody. These are our neighbours, let them go. Yeah, let them go. You suddenly hear a choir singing it, and it's there. It's almost on a plate. So you've got the idea, and so it's not like sitting down with a piece of paper that's blank and going, what can I write about that's hopeful? Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if there's some hope? You already have all the story. Yeah. You can picture all the verses. You can see where the chorus is going to be, where it's going to build. So it just makes it so much easier. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds great. The other thing I was going to ask you is how much of your melody do you do before you then start going back to an instrument? Would you just write your chorus, your melody line, or would you write the whole song just melodically and then start pitching your?
No, I just have a snatch of an idea and think, okay, that works. That could be a hook or a chorus or something like that. Yeah. And folk music's really easy for that, because if I'm doing something that's meant to be kind of folky, then it follows very strict patterns.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's only a certain amount of leeway you've got. So it's dead easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the challenge with that is that the tradition is so strong that he's like, how do we break the tradition whilst being faithful to it?
Yeah, yeah. Similar blues, and it's like that. So it's kind of like,
absolutely.
Write blues songs that are true to tradition, but don't sound the same as everyone else's.
On the way out today, I was listening to Randy Newman. I don't know if you know Randy Newman, and he does lots of blues stuff, and he does it in such a way that you know exactly where it's going, but then he puts something in. He'll just put a kind of a melody or a chord that doesn't quite fit, goes somewhere else, because he's also jazz and all, and he does classical stuff, and you think, oh, that's the bit that makes it.
Yeah.
But you like the familiarity of the whole thing, but you want him to go to that little space that's new.
Different.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's all really interesting. Let's move into section 2 of the podcast now. So, this is where I ask my guests for a songwriting tip, and often we always end up talking about loads of tips in the first section.
Yeah.
But have you got a particular tip you'd like to share with our listeners, Boff?
I think my main tip is to collaborate with people. Is to allow other people into your process. I just think that's really important. Obviously, I would say that being in a band where we kind of shared the songwriting for years and years and years, but having come out of that, I kind of learned that no matter how perfect something is, how good it is, this is exactly right. There's often somebody else who can just put something in where you just think, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Whether it's a changed lyric or even just a bit of an instrument playing something else, and you just think, oh, that's really good. And so I always find it weird where there's a songwriter in a band and nobody else in the band gets any credit. And I always think, surely that person didn't come up with that drum pattern as well. So like all the Beatles stuff, some of the drum patterns are brilliant, and Ringo doesn't get credited for them. And I think in Chumbers we were fortunate that we all kind of accepted that even if some people didn't write songs and never wrote songs, that what they contributed to the band in every other way, whether it was kind of spiritually or physically or in terms of, doing jobs within the band, was just as important as the songwriting. So let's just all say it's all, and everyone's allowed to put ideas in. Yeah, and I always thought of it that the songs wouldn't be the same if those people weren't involved, even if they've not been directly involved in here's a lyric for this or here's this part. Yeah. But even it's just the knowledge that this song is going to be performed by this group of people. Yeah. That's an influence they've had on writing it. Absolutely. Yeah. If it's coming from a place of collaboration and of sharing and of cooperation, then it will sound like that. It will come across like that. And I think that's really good. I did listen to there's a jam album called All Mod Cons, their third album, which I really love. It's got some great songwriting in it, like Down in the Tube Station at Midnight and things like that. Really good songs. And then when Paul Weller left, he carried on doing his solo stuff and everything. I always wondered how much input the rest of the jam had in that, because there's great bass lines and the drum patterns are really good and really nice harmonies. And then I got a kind of special collector's edition of the album that had some of the demos that Paul Weller played. And apparently Paul Weller would go in the studio and play drums and bass and put the harmonies on and do the whole thing and then take it to the band. And I'm really interested to it. And I listened to them and they're really, really similar. So he did the bass lines and he did the drumming. Wow. And I kind of thought, I was a bit disappointed. I thought, oh. So they were kind of like session musicians. Yeah. But, and so you could see why he got fed up and thought, right, I want to leave and do something else. Yeah. Whereas in the bands and the projects I've been in, I couldn't just walk away and say, I'll take the whole thing because it's all me. Because it's never been like that, even with theatre. And so lately, going back to because the second piece of music I was thinking was completely opposite from Your Ugly Houses, which is that I've been working with Welsh National Opera, and it's, you're working with string quartets and with 6 operatic voices, but the most important thing is that we're working with a refugee centre in Cardiff, And it's me and a writer, Sarah Woods, and we get the stories from the refugees, asylum seekers. We talk to them, we involve them, we collaborate with them about, some of them play instruments. So like, great, let's see what you play. And some of these people are incredible musicians, you know, from say Iran or from Central America. We're working with different people and they've come here and they're not recognized as musicians, they're recognized just as refugees, which is awful, because they can be doctors and teachers, and they've got incredible, you know, qualifications, and they come here and they're just seen as refugees and they can't get jobs. And if they're still seeking asylum, they're not even allowed to get paid for anything. So we work with them and get them to play their instruments that before I've worked with them in the last 2 or 3 years, I'd never heard of. Here's a 3-string instrument, and this is I don't know, it's a tambour or a sitar, and it's only got, the tuning is, there's only 2 different notes on this thing, and then they play this thing on it. It's like incredible, and you can't orchestrate it, you can't write it musically because it's lots of strings being played at once. You just think that's beautiful. Let's take that and put it in with the opera. Put it in with cellos and violins and all the time you're going through it, you're thinking this is truly collaborative. They are having as much input into it as they can give, and that's fantastic. Some of the opera players in the kind of opposite way don't collaborate at all. They're professional musicians, and some of them are brilliant, and they want to know what the project is and where the music comes from. Why is it saying this, and what's the words about it? Some of them don't care about that at all. They're just professional musicians. They want the score, and the score has got to be absolutely perfect. And if there's something on the score, like one bit where it gets a little bit louder or whatever, and it's not written in there properly, they'll play it the wrong way, and you stop and say, oh, no, that's meant to build up on that note, and they'll go, well, it's not written there. So you get the score, and you write it in, and you go there, and then they play it perfectly. And so that's not collaboration to me. That's it's beautiful, but it's not collaboration. Whereas with the asylum seekers and some of the opera people, they're fascinated and they want to know what their role is in this and what it's all going to sound like. And that to me is so much more fulfilling than sitting on my own writing a song and thinking, oh, I've written a good song there. And it's the same with actors. This is another thing as well. With actors, I can writing a script, because I write musicals and plays and stuff. I write something and I'll often read it through lots and lots of times, see what it's sounding like. And I've got it all in my head, and I can hear all the characters in my head, just how I want it. And then you give it and you go in on the first couple of days and they do a read through, or they do a kind of little walk through, and they're reading from the script. And these, actors they're incredible, and they just start reading this thing and they'll say a line in a way that I immediately think, oh, that's better than it was in my head. Yeah. And I love that. What a lovely feeling that is, to think, yeah, it's not just me going, I want it exactly like this. It's you doing something to it that makes it better. Yeah. And what a privilege it is for me to be able to work with actors who can bring something to life that you hadn't thought of. They can do things, even a lot. There can be a line in a script or in a song, and they deliver that line with a look to the audience or to the other characters that completely changes the line. Yeah, and it's beautiful. Yeah. It's really, you just think, no, that's why I like doing theatre, because it's not just me in my room. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that link before, but I've heard stories about great scenes that were improvised in films and stuff like that. Yeah. But yeah, you're right, and the symmetry there with musicians, that there must be actors and writers and directors who don't want any of that.
Absolutely.
By the book, I'm going to say exactly what you said. Yeah. And others who are much more like to play with it. This is the idea. Yeah. And same with, it's effectively jamming, isn't it? Yeah. Like if you've got, this is the scene. Yeah. This is the song, but let's play around within it and see. Absolutely. Sometimes, a great variation on the riff might come out, or solo, or getting the phrasing something different. Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's fascinating. I love this, how when you hear about different art forms and you see there's just so many patterns
like
that are the same.
Completely,
using the different tools. And again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's the craft and the inspiration and the way these interact is very similar ways. One thing I want to ask you is the opera project sounds fascinating. Did you know much about opera going into this? Like, have you been kind of learning?
I got thrown in the deep end.
And what's that been like?
I knew little bits of it, but not really.
Yeah.
And Sarah, who's the writer, because I'd worked with her on something else, she obviously thought I bet he'd be good at doing opera. And she rang me up and said, "I've had this idea. What do you think?" She said, I've got this collaboration with Welsh National Opera at the moment, and they wanted me to do something about such thing. What do you think about coming in as the composer and writing? And I went, yeah, brilliant. That sounds fantastic. And then I put the phone down, and then I thought, I have no idea how to write, a score, how to write for opera. I don't know what it sounds like. I don't know, I've seen it, but how do you write for that? Yeah. But I just thought, no, it sounds too interesting to have a go. And the first time I walked in, once we got to the point where I'd written a rough score for something and got the lyrics, I kind of realized that it sounds like me writing for opera. It doesn't sound like opera. It sounds like me writing for opera, to me anyway, because it's still melodic. I'm still really keen on people being able to hear what's being sung rather than that full-blown. I worked with Jenny from Welsh National Opera, and she was brilliant. But she basically said, there's several ways that I can sing. And do you want me to tone it down? And then she recorded herself singing the same line 3 or 4 times with different levels of toning down. And even at the lowest level of toning down, which I liked, it still wasn't like pop singing or theatre singing or musicals. It was still incredibly operatic, but you could hear the diction and the enunciation, so you could follow the story. So I was like, that one. And she was really happy to do that. She's like, that's great, because normally we're up here doing this one, because that's what the opera audience likes. So it's really nice to. So it's all been, and I walked into a room at Welsh National Opera with this huge rehearsal room with these string players and everything, and total what's the word? Imposter syndrome, which I've always had from being a kid. And punk taught me, ignore your imposter syndrome, ignore it, walk into it, just go for it, doesn't matter. And it's really difficult sometimes. But I walked into that room and thought, oh my God, they're all looking at me. And they'd be playing something or singing something, and they'd kind of look at me and go, what do you think of that, Boff? And all the time I'm thinking, they think I'm better than I am. They think I'm better than I am. And you have to fight it, and think, actually, no, they're kind of appreciating that I've done things in a different way, and it's not what they're used to. And because Sarah had them like singing in different languages, which they'd never done before. And we had them making bird noises. So this is this section and then we got these beautiful things that, because it was, anyway, I think we'd sent away to France this beautiful place where this guy and his daughter make small wooden instruments that you play them in all different ways, and they make specific birds. It's this beautiful thing, and you get these little wooden things, and it's like this one's a chaffinch, and this is how there's instructions on how to play it, and it's like with you do, and it's brilliant. So we handed them out to the musicians and to the singers, these opera singers. This thing about their voices, like, right, we want you to do this thing to be a chaffinch for this section, and it's brilliant, and I love it. I just think great, and some of them were a bit like, okay, but some of them were like, I love this. This is great. We don't get asked to do this,
something different.
I wish we could always make bird noises in our operas,
And it's good. I mean, I think it's well done to you for doing it and be willing to put yourself in that situation. I was thinking, especially with like, it's kind of like the most opposite ends of the spectrum as well. Someone like from a punk background to opera, which is regarded as like one of the most highbrow ones, and punk being like the complete opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah,
so we willing to do it, and like I think it's just great for a great example of that. Always being willing to learn and putting yourself in new situations and not relying on, as you say, like when you know these patterns, you could just keep writing albums that will be successful and like go through it, but it's kind of pushing yourself to explore something interesting.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you're like, I guess taking that when you heard about it, being like, well, that sounds interesting. Not quite sure how it's going to work, but I'm going to give it a go and figure it out. And that's
And the good thing is that it's always worked. Whenever we did it with Chumbers, where we'd made 2 albums in about 1980. I think it would be 86 and 87. We made 2 albums, quite punky, a bit melodic and stuff, but basically really noisy. And then we said, okay, we've done these 2 albums. We don't just want to make another one that's the same. What should we do? And we were talking about it, lots of meetings. Came up with the idea, why don't we just record a cappella folk songs from English history? Because there's lots of Irish songs and Scottish songs, rebel songs and songs from like Central America and Eastern Europe. Let's find the English ones that are about people in the factories and people in the fields that were fighting for better wages. And so we went and did this whole project where we found these old songs. And this is before the internet, obviously. Going to record libraries and finding songs and working out how to sing them and just singing them a cappella. And of course, our audience went, what's that? I've just got these 2 albums that I'm really enjoying because you can jump up and down to them and go crazy. And then you're giving me this song about a workers' strike in 1916, and it's just 4 voices on it. And we love that, just that challenge. And it was weird because at the time we were like, is this basically commercial suicide? Are we just about to just completely die as a band? But fortunately, people got it and caught onto it and thought, that's what this band are. They're about the ideas. So let's go with it and let's see what happens.
And you guess you get a different attachment. An audience attaches to a band in a different way than when it's not purely about a style of music. It's about an ethos and an attitude and the characters involved and the stuff that they're exploring. And
absolutely, totally.
Yeah, and people might gravitate more. They might like one album more than another, but they're generally interested in whatever's going to come out.
Completely. Because and the thing, we've talked a lot about the Beatles, but to me, it's not particularly just because I'm a Beatles fan, but it's more that I think that the example that they set as artists and songwriters in challenging themselves. So there is something like 3 years between She Loves You and Sgt. Pepper and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. 3 years. And you think that's incredible. Yeah. They've gone from that to doing this incredible psychedelic music and then they went from there to, and I just think that's the way to do it. Just don't care if your audience are going to go, no, we loved you when you were lovable mop tops doing She Loves You. We don't want this weird stuff about drugs. We're not going to buy your records anymore. And they didn't care. They were just like, this is what we're doing now. And it worked. And people did carry on buying their stuff because they thought, well, we like the fact that they are they're changing with the world. And I've always loved doing that as well. Changing, like how technology's changed in my lifetime in music. So now I use technology all the time. And a lot of people are kind of purists. No, keep it analog, keep it like wooden string. And I think, no, just try and get involved in all of it. Try it all. Harry, who was Chumbers' drummer, I remember in the really early 90s, he had an Apple Mac computer and just bought this software to make drum beats. And it was all about connectivity and MIDI and all that sort of thing. And he had a big chart that he'd made on the wall with all these handwritten things, which was learning how to do it from scratch, because it was really complicated then. It's a lot easier now, but and he just learnt it all from scratch within the making of one album. He was like, I need to learn how to do that, how to program beats and drums and loops and all that sort of thing. And I just thought, that is fantastic, because he could have, drummers, they love their art, their thing. That's what they do, and they're really good at it. And he was a really good drummer. And he was like, right, I'm going to put that down for a bit. I'm going to learn how to do this. And I really admire that. I think, that's the way to do it.
And then it always breaks your patterns that you fall into. Like you say with the guitar, and you can fall into the same pattern. Sorry, I'm just seeing someone coming to the door right there.
Someone with a yellow jacket.
Someone with a yellow jacket. Whereas when you do something completely different, you have to learn a different set of skills.
Do you want to go and see?
Yeah, just pause for a second.
Yeah, I'll just carry on talking to the camera.
Hello.
he's gone to see. It's the police. It's the police, and they're arresting him. Oh no.
Yeah. So back in a minute.
Okay. He says he's going to be back in a minute, but I think he's going to be back in about 6 months. Well, they're dragging him down the driveway now. Oh, there's a policeman out there. It's all kicking off. No, I'm lying. It's a bloke come to read the gas meter. I'll shut up now.
Good stuff. Cool. Right. Well, and that's probably a good time to just move into section 3 of the podcast. So this is why I asked my guests to share with us a song that's meaningful to them in some way related to bereavement. And what I'm going to do occasionally, I'm going to edit the song into the podcast. So you want to tell us what song it is you've chosen for a save off?
Yeah, it's a song for Heathcote Williams, who was a great kind of poet and writer from right at the end of the 60s, right through the kind of 1970s and 80s. And I first discovered him when he wrote a kind of book-length poem. Well, he wrote a poem called Whale Nation. He wrote one called Autogeddon about cars taking over the world. And I remember hearing a tape of it that our friend Dev had made for us. And I just thought it was just the most beautiful, kind of poetic, beautifully written, angry thing about cars, just wrecking, and oil and petrol and the whole thing. And really political guy. And eventually I got to know him, but only just by sending things to him. Because what it was is that I made one last time the Queen had some kind of Jubilee thing, which would be, I don't know, early 2000s, I can't remember. She had something or other. And I made a poster that was based on William Morris's design and his kind of indictment of royalty, talking about how vulgar it is and everything. I made this poster and I was kind of selling them just for cost price to people. And Heathcote got in touch and said, "Oh, I love those posters. Can I buy some?" And he bought some, and then he bought some more. And then, so we got this lovely kind of dialogue going where I'd send him whatever we were doing in the band or, writing or theatre things. And he would always send me his new poems. And we had this lovely kind of thing going on, which was really nice. And then quite suddenly he died, basically. And so his sisters, I think it was, got in touch because they knew that we'd been, exchanging correspondence a lot. And they said, would I come down to his funeral and play something? And I was really kind of touched by this and thought, that's really nice. But we couldn't, because I can't remember who it was with. It was either with the theatre or with the choir. We had a gig on the same day and I couldn't go, and I was really disappointed. So I wrote and said, well, I can't come on that day, but can I send something? And they said, yeah. And so I sent a song that I wanted, that got played at the funeral. And as it happens, it got played at the funeral, and Sarah Woods, the writer, heard it. And that was the way she just heard this song, didn't know who it was by, and thought, I need to get in touch with that person and do some work with them. So it was really, what's the word, serendipitous. It was really good. But what it was is that I wanted to write a song about him, because the thing I always liked about him was that he had a kind of troubled life and a troubled family life. But he was forever kind of being this kind of maverick, kicking against the pricks, not doing what he was told. Even when he got older and older, he was still, he was one of the first people to write a proper kind of poem about Boris Johnson, long before he was in the Foreign Office, detailing how Johnson had managed to get into some position of power and kind of warning everyone, you've got to be careful of this man. He's an idiot and he's a buffoon, but he's going to be really powerful and he's going to do terrible things. This is long before, he was powerful. And so he was writing these great, angry things. So I didn't want to write a kind of nice, gentle, weren't you nice, Heathcote? It was nice to know you kind of thing. And a lot of eulogies and things are like that. And that's beautiful that they're kind of saying, we're sad about somebody passing and we want to remember them and feel this kind of, emotional kind of pull of. So I thought, I want to write something that's kind of got that feel to it in terms of it being nice and melodic, but I want the lyrics to be kind of saying, you never wanted that nice, peaceful, quiet, gentle kind of life. What you wanted was the stick in the mud kind of life, and the you know, being out of the ordinary kind of life, and the getting in people's way kind of life. All the things that you were the person that, and I wanted to celebrate that.
Yeah.
And so I wrote it as that, and I wrote it because I just thought, I can imagine if it was Heathcote, that he would look at it and go, yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's me. I'm the kind of, you know, I'm the one that said, yeah, I'm the one that, you know, the fly in the ointment. Yeah. I'm happy to have that, rather than something kind of, oh, he was such a nice man, kind of thing. And I've always, it's funny because as obviously I've got older, I've become more aware of people dying, and, you know, friends and everything. And there's always that kind of absolute sadness and grief mixed with wanting to celebrate the life and the joyousness, or the you know, the big life that people had. You don't want it to be reduced to this tiny thing in a ceremony. I went to Roy Bailey's funeral. Roy Bailey's he was a great folk singer, and I went to his funeral, and it was the one of the best parts about these things is people are saying nice things about someone, and they play some music and all that sort of thing. But at some point in Roy Bailey's funeral, everybody sang, and that was the point where it became real. People want to sing his songs. Come on, sing his songs. You know, let's not all go, yeah, he was such a lovely singer, and let's kind of leave it at that. It's like, no, he sang songs because he wanted people to sing along. Yeah. So let's do that. Yeah.
Hi everyone. Sorry, it's back to me. You may have noticed towards the end of the podcast there, we started having some technical problems, and the last 10 minutes or so of our conversation between me and Boff kind of wasn't recorded properly. It became very glitchy and you couldn't make out what we were saying. So I'm really sorry about that, and sorry to Boff that we're not getting to share that part of the conversation, because it was really interesting. The technical problem on my part. This is the first time I've done one from the home studio. I need to check my kit out properly, make sure that doesn't happen again, because it's a real shame. I'll try and summarize some of the stuff we talked about, because it was some really interesting stuff. So we were talking about Boff's song Never Yours. I'm going to play to close this podcast out in a moment, that he wrote for his friend Heathcote Williams's funeral. We talked about what it was like from writing that song on an emotional level, and the kind of responsibility that he felt with trying to get that song right, which is a really interesting subject, I find. So, like, especially for someone like him who's written so many songs, to then be writing a song for someone's funeral, and who was touching on it a bit beforehand, before the recording cut out there, about how he didn't want it to just be like, you know, that kind of stereotypical funeral song of like, oh, this person was great, they had no flaws or anything like that. He wanted it to be a accurate description of who he was. And then how important it is to get that balance right if you're going to do something nuanced, because you know, you want the person's family members and friends to recognize them in it accurately. So there's some interesting stuff there. We also talked about some Chumbawamba songs that are particularly meaningful to people, and how meanings of songs can evolve over time. So he was telling us a story about a friend of his that was in an accident, and someone was trying to carry them back to safety after this accident, and they were singing a Chumbawamba song, and the person died in the end, very sadly. And he knew about this. He'd heard about this story of them singing one of his songs, and then how performing that song live now is very very challenging at times, because it's it's tied up in those memories. And we're sharing stories of how many songs can do that. A song can be written about one thing and they take on a completely different meaning to certain people, or to even to the writers, when the song attaches itself to different memories. And he was talking about Dub Thumping, which is Chumbawamba's biggest hit, the I get knocked down but I get up again. That holds those kind of memories for a lot of people, as it's just, an anthem for getting through hard times. So yeah, we talked a bit about that as well. So yeah, again, I'm really sorry that you didn't get to hear the end of our conversation, because it was really interesting. Maybe we'll do it again sometime, and I'll do my best to avoid that happening on future episodes. Yeah, sorry about that, but I hope you enjoyed what you did get out of the podcast. That was most of it. There was only 10 minutes or so left there at the end, and I'm going to play you the song we were talking about at the end there to finish out on. So this is Never Yours by Boff Whalley, written for his friend Heathcote Williams, the poet, his funeral. And I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in.
Just what you told lives, forced to fit the mold lives, prematurely old lives, never yours. There are begging for the scraps lives, foot caught in the trap lives, yes sir, doff your cap lives, never yours. There are tactful toe the line lives, bootlick and benign lives, decent and discreet lives, beat a slow retreat lives, clean behind the ears lives, counting down the years lives, quiet lives that hush behind closed doors, never yours. Never make a mess lives, accept and acquiesce lives, retirement and regret lives, never yours. There are calmly tiptoe out lives, there and thereabout lives, a whisper not a shout lives, never yours. There are tactful toe the line lives, bootlick and benign lives, decent and discreet lives, beat a slow retreat lives, clean behind the ears lives, counting down the years lives, quiet lives that hush behind closed doors, never yours. Standing for what's right lives, bottom up and fight lives, staying up all night lives, that was yours. There are sing another tune lives, shooting for the moon lives, left us far too soon lives, that was yours.